Chris Rock has long been the sharp voice that turns laughter into truth. A kid who went from the hard edges of Brooklyn to the biggest stages in the world and made the whole country think while it laughed. Born on February 7, 1965 in Andrews, South Carolina, the eldest of 7, he moved as an infant with his parents, Julius, who juggled newspaper routes and truck shifts, and Rosalie, who taught preschool and did social work, to a small Bedford-Stuyvesant apartment where coins were counted at the kitchen table and hope was patched together like worn sleeves. By 10, he was bussed across town under a desegregation plan that promised opportunity and delivered cruelty. One of the only black kids in hallways where mockery traveled faster than mercy. So he tied his shoes tight, learned to stay quiet, and used humor as a shield until the defense became a craft. Teenage years meant greasy shifts, long subway rides, and nights outside catch a rising star listening through the walls to the sound he wanted to earn, scribbling lines on cold trains because jokes were cheaper than dinner. By 18, he was bombing in basements that smelled like old beer and hot mic cables, riding the rails till dawn because home meant rent he couldn't cover. Telling himself, as he later admitted in therapy, "I learned to laugh before I learned to breathe," and then, in 1986, lightning finally walked through the door. Eddie Murphy saw the fire inside the rough edges, slipped him a tiny part in Beverly Hills Cop 2, and with one smile cracked open a future. Hollywood's welcome was polite but chilly, and the real break came in 1990 when he stepped into Saturday Night Live's Blue Lights, where silence is a death sentence and the writer's room is a fistfight with pencils. He survived, left in 1993, and rebuilt on the road, cheap buses and cheaper motels, until 1996 turned combustion into career Bring the Pain hit. The crowd roared like truth meeting gasoline. And 2 Emmys later, Chris Rock wasn't just funny, he was necessary. Bigger and Blacker in 1999 and Never Scared in 2004 pushed the line further. The Chris Rock Show, 1997-2000, made interviews cut like scalpels. Everybody Hates Chris, 2005-2009, turned childhood bruises into a TV classic. Movies came with mixed numbers. Head of State, 2003, at $38 million on a $35 million budget. I Think I Love My Wife, 2007, doubling costs but drawing shrugs. But he kept swinging because, as he likes to say, you don't make it in this business, you survive it. Netflix brought the resurrection money could measure, $40 million into 2016. And Tambourine, 2018, brought the softer revolution, a single spotlight and a man finally using the mic to confess as much as joke. Marriage, failure, fear, therapy. Then, Selective Outrage in 2023 took the story everyone replayed and put it where it belonged, inside his voice, proving humiliation can become art when you refuse to let anger write the ending. And yet, nothing prepared the world for March 27, 2022. The Dolby Theater Gold Bright. The Oscars Live, a quick joke to Jada Pinkett Smith. A sudden change of air. Will Smith striding forward, a hand rising. A crack that sounded louder than a drumline, and a room full of legends watching time freeze in 14 seconds. Chris stood there, stunned, steady, and professional, found the one calm line he had left. Wow! And finished the job while the world stopped breathing. He didn't curse, didn't swing, didn't crumble. He did what years of basement bombs and live TV panic had taught him to do. Hold the moment together until it passes. Afterward, he kept the only power that mattered, silence, while headlines fed like piranhas. Tony Rock defended his brother and got pulled into the storm. Will apologized privately and publicly and called it a scar for life. And months later, Chris answered the only way he trusts, on stage, in rhythm, with lines sharpened by grace rather than revenge. The applause that night wasn't just for jokes. It was for restraint under fire, for the craft that keeps you upright when everything else is trying to tip you over. It would be easy to end the legend there, in trophies and turning points, but his real story has always been the same. A boy who learned in noisy rooms and lonely trains that the microphone only gives you a voice. The life you build decides what you say with it, away from cameras. The soundtrack was quieter and heavier. Julius Rock, the father who said, "I love you," by waking before sunrise and coming home smelling like diesel and rain. Died in 1988 after surgery for an ulcer when Chris was 23, a loss that split him in two, the part that went silent and the part, as he put it, that got louder. In 2006, his half-brother Charles L. Rock died at 52 after battling alcoholism, the kind of grief that doesn't announce itself so much as change the way you laugh. He'd already buried friends who were brothers in comedy, Chris Farley, on December 18, 1997 at 33, the funniest and maybe saddest man he knew, a reminder that applause can't outshout loneliness. Bernie Mac in August 2008 at 50, a mentor whose laugh felt like sunlight and whose pride in black comedy gave the whole craft a spine. Those losses slowed Chris's cadence and deepened the silences between punchlines because, as he now says, you can't joke your way out of pain. You have to face it. Love brought its own lessons. He met Malek Compton in 1994, a calm presence in a loud world. Married in 1996, built a home in Alpine, New Jersey, where the morning soundtrack was a coffee hiss and quiet jazz, and became dad to Lola Simone in 2002 and Zara Savannah in 2004. Sundays in the park and weeknights on the couch under a small, warm pile of kid. Success, though, has gravity. Tours stretched, absences widened, and what didn't break from shouting eroded from silence. He later owned the hardest parts plainly: infidelity, emotional distance, using performance to dodge intimacy. I wasn't a good husband. That's nobody's fault but mine, he says in Tambourine. And he went to therapy not to polish the brand, but to figure out the man. By December 2014, they separated. The divorce finalized in 2016, no tabloid war, just two adults choosing grace and shared custody. Living miles apart but showing up because being a father, he says, isn't about weekends, it's about presence. The rebuild continued with honesty, layered over discipline. In 2020, he spoke about being diagnosed with NVLD. I used to think I was bad at people. Turns out I'm neurologically bad at people, and kept therapy as a practice, not a phase. In 2021, he talked about catching COVID, mild but humbling. You think you're in control until something invisible reminds you you're not. The work kept evolving. Everybody Still Hates Chris premiered in 2024, an animated, modern retelling he narrates and executive produces, drawing new fans while giving old ones a better seat. Into 2025, he's developing a film he'll direct and star in. Close friends call it intimate, fearless, and the most personal since Top 5. Because, as he likes to put it, you don't retire from truth. You find new ways to tell it. The numbers are the easy part. 4 Emmys, 3 Grammys, decades of sellouts, an estimated $60 million net worth in 2025. But he measures wealth in quieter currency now: peace. Alpine remains home, a 10,300 square foot place on 2 acres he bought in 2001 for $3 million. Now near 6 million sunlight on shelves of family photos. A short drive to his first big purchase in Brooklyn that he keeps to remember where I started, a garage that mixes elegance and endurance. Rolls-Royce Phantom, Lamborghini Gallardo, Tesla Model Plaid, Range Rover Autobiography, and a schedule built around 2 standing ovations that still matter most. Lola at 23, studying in Paris. Zara at 21, pursuing humanitarian work in the lane her mother paved with Styleworks. The giving stays quiet. Millions across education, women's empowerment, disaster relief. Consistent support for Brooklyn charities, because if you've been lucky, he says, your next job is to make sure someone else gets lucky too. Most nights are simpler now, cooking at home, late calls with his daughters, unannounced slips into small New York clubs to work out new thoughts with no cameras. When it's good, it feels like breathing. And if you want the whole arc in one breath, it sounds like this. A boy rides a bus that doesn't want him, learns to make a room laugh before it learns his name, blows up in 1996, stumbles, confesses in 2018, stands tall again in 2023, carries scars without letting them curdle into bitterness, and at 60 keeps choosing the discipline of grace over the thrill of outrage. That's why the Oscars moment won't be the headline of his life, not because it wasn't seismic, but because it revealed what was already true. When chaos walks up the stairs, he stays on his feet. The stages will dim and the crowds will thin, but somewhere in New Jersey, two voices will still call, "Dad," and he'll answer, which is what redemption sounds like when the mic is off. If this story moved you, leave a gentle like, share a word, or drop a memory because applause is nice. But a life lived honestly, rebuilt in daylight, and forgiven out loud is the kind of standing ovation that lasts.